And fired up, footballers. Welcome to Spinning Fire. We have a very special guest today, Sam Stejskal from MLSsoccer.com. A writer there happens to be on with us, and we're very thankful. Sam, how's it going? You excited for the season to start?
I'm doing well. I am excited. It's crazy that it's a week away. I still can't fully wrap my head around that, or I guess less than a week away now. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm ready to get back into games and have some more stuff to talk about. So yeah, excited, ready to go.
Cool. All right, then let's get right into it. So before we talk Fire, just a general question here. How did you get involved in soccer and having the love of the game? And more specifically, how did you get involved covering the game of soccer?
Yeah, so, oh man, this is ancient history now. But, the story of how I got into the game is probably the same as 90%, right? I grew up playing in the suburbs in Chicago and traveling around and doing that. And
what position?
That way. I was midfield for a while and eventually transitioned to defense. Kind of played right back and center back. But so yeah, that's how I got into it. And then I went to school and kind of fell into covering the Fire almost on accident. And really enjoyed it and really wanted to stay around the game. And ended up actually taking a job in the Real Salt Lake communications department out of college. And did that for a couple of years and then took a year away from the game and then got back in my current role almost 4.5 years ago now. So I've been reporting on the league consecutively for that long. But anyone listening that has been following the Fire for a long time might remember my coverage from like 2009 and 2010, back when I had no idea what I was doing compared to now when I have a slight idea.
Guillermo mentioned that the other day when he was on here.
Yeah, I actually was the founder of Fire Confidential.
Oh, yeah, wow.
That's right.
Yeah.
How did that go? How did that even start? Like what?
Well, I shouldn't say I was the founder. I was the founding editor because the Chicago Now, so the Tribune, I don't even know if they still own it. I assume they do. Started this network of blogs, and I had been writing Fire stuff for Soccer by Ivis with Ivis Galarsa for 3 whole weeks.
He's a great follower.
And they reached out to me after that and said, hey, do you want to do this? And I was a freshman in college. And I said, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And kind of just went from there. A year later, started writing for MLS Soccer and passed the torch to Guillermo and Fire Confidential. And, here we are almost a decade later.
By the way, everybody, toss a like for Sam Stejskal coming on the show. Toss a follow Spinning Fire and hit that bell icon so you can always know when we're streaming. Usually, once every weekend or so. And just for that little business, Sam. So you just moved. How's that going? You left Chicago.
Yeah, I left Chicago. Wife got a great job out in Boston, so we moved to Boston a few weeks ago. Going so far so good. Definitely miss home, but no, Boston's been a pleasant surprise. I think we entered with low expectations, but it's been really, really nice so far.
Great sports town. At least you went from one great sports town to another, so that's great.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the Patriots won the Super Bowl like the second day I was here, so that was.
You took a Chicago look.
Being surrounded by Patriots fans, but we'll get there.
I got one more question on you being now working for MLSsoccer.com.
Yeah.
How much has your role changed from covering the Fire only to now having a more widespread view of the MLS?
Yeah, so I think my job is more interesting now just because, the nature, I can follow the most interesting story going on in the league at any given day or hour or week or whatever, right? Whereas when you're covering a team-specific beat, and this isn't a knock on the Fire by any means, but if I was covering the Golden State Warriors or the New England Patriots or Atlanta United, when you're covering that one team, that really turns into a grind. And at a certain point in the season, you've covered every story that there is to cover 4 times about that team. So, that can get a little tiring. And being able to cover the entire league is a real blessing in that way because, there are so many different stories. On the other side of that coin, of course, is that it's a lot to keep up with and a lot that you need to be a quote unquote expert on. But it's fun and I really enjoy it. And it's been a good time, and hopefully I've been able to add some value to people that have followed along.
You seem like you're the go-to guy for transfer talk in MLS. When I heard you go on Extra Time Radio the other day, and they were talking to you about Toronto and the Pozzello situation, which seems to may have broken down. But it seems like, can you get into a little bit of that?
Yeah, just the Pozuelo situation,
and also you kind of being the transfer guy.
Whole transfer, yeah,
all of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I'll start, I guess, more broadly first, but yeah, it's just, you know, in the course of reporting, you know, you build up a network and build up contacts, and if you're lucky enough where people respect and like your work, then they're more willing to talk to you. And, you know, kind of as your platform gets bigger and the more you do, almost the easier it gets. You know, I remember when I was first starting out trying to do this stuff, and you know, you try and break a big story, and it's really hard, and it's pulling teeth, and you're trying to lock it up from a few different sources and people you may or may not know, and you kind of got to get lucky a little bit, and you kind of got to be right place, right time. But then once you start doing it more and more, it sort of builds on itself. And so I've been lucky enough to be in the right place and the right time a few times, and you know, I don't know if I'm the go-to or anything like that, but I'm trying. And you know, I've been lucky enough to be able to do a few cool things over the years. So definitely feel very lucky to be able to be in that position. And then on the Pozuelo stuff, I mean, to take it a totally different tack, I think that situation is really indicative of where MLS is going as a whole, actually. So for anyone not familiar with it, there's been this whole will he or won't he saga. He had a release clause where if a team met that release clause, Genk, his club in Belgium, is supposed to let him go. And
8 million or something?
Yeah, it was 8 million euros. So I can't remember. It's 9 point something in terms of US dollars. But so Toronto, from what I've been told, met that release clause, and Genk are not letting him go. And there's some confusion over, you know, legal stuff, and he's threatened to take legal action against Genk, and all sorts of craziness happening behind the scenes that I'm sure we don't even know about yet, and maybe we'll never even know about. But getting back to the broader point of, you know, this is indicative of where MLS is going as a whole, as more money is starting to be spent by teams in the transfer market, and conversely, as more money is starting to be brought in by teams in the transfer market in terms of outgoing sales, you're going to have craziness like this more and more often. You know, the world of transfers is occasionally shady, often very dramatic and theatrical, and misinformation, information. You got to sift through all of that. And MLS for a long time has been a pretty insular league in terms of, you know, not doing lots of big money deals, so the stakes are a little lower, and then not really selling players historically. So as that starts to change, teams and general managers and owners and, you know, technical directors and all those sorts of people are going to have to get better at this quickly. And I'm really interested to see how that plays out over the next year and decade, really, as MLS continues to grow.
They've definitely increased their international presence. I follow EPL. We follow EPL, and on Sky Sports Transfer, they seem to be covering a lot more MLS. There's a little more MLS tidbits happening, just with a lot of the high-profile names that are coming over and leaving MLS, like El Myron. I don't know if you've alluded to this in a past podcast or something you've talked in, but Jeffrey and I have spoken to it. Did we see in this last transfer window the evolution from MLS 3.0 to maybe MLS 4.0?
I don't know what number we're on now. But,
I don't even know I forgot what the numbers even mean now.
But I do think there was a bit of a paradigm shift really this winter. And I'm writing about this week, and hopefully the article will be out tomorrow or Tuesday. But
MLSsoccer.com.
Yeah, thank you. Kind of what I just was alluding to. You know, the money is getting bigger, the stakes are getting higher, and there's going to be more and more wild sorts of situations happening within MLS that can sort of define a club for a year or multiple years that teams haven't had to deal with before. I mean, look at the Lucho Acosta thing, right? Is he going to go to Paris Saint-Germain? Everyone's reporting he is, both here and in Europe, right? And then it falls through, right? Well, I'm sure Lucho Acosta was not happy about that, right? He's got a life-changing move that he thinks he's making, and then it falls through. So you have to manage that player coming back in now. And how do you reintegrate him into your team, right? And how do you make sure he's an effective piece for you on the field this season when he's in the last year of his contract and he might leave for free, right? So that's the other part of it is are you able to sign him to a long-term deal so you don't lose him for nothing? Or is the situation so far gone that he's not interested in that and he's just going to sign a pre-contract with whoever he feels like
PSG.
in July and leave in January for free. So they're just like, these situations are very multifaceted, and they're really going to be happening in with an increasing frequency, I think, in the future. And MLS teams are going to have to figure that out, and I think that's a really exciting thing. Both certainly in terms of what I do, right?
Yeah.
That makes my job, there's more interesting stories to tell, right? But just in terms of following the league and in terms of where the league's going, I think it's an exciting thing. I think more money is going to be coming in, more money is going to be coming out, and the quality of play and everything should rise along with it. So, which is, I think, what all fans of MLS want, right? So I think it's gonna be really interesting.
Who's your favorite U.S. Youngster right now? Is it Pulisic? Is it Adams? Is it Sargent? There's a bunch of names there. Who's the guy you're looking at right now?
Yeah, I really like Adams. I really like Adams. Pulisic is obviously great. The $73 million or whatever it ended up being transfer is ridiculous.
And they got that ban, so he's going to be playing.
Yeah. But they got the deal done and loaned him back. So they got him in under the deadline, which is, I'm sure, why they structured it like they did, knowing that this might be coming down. But I don't like that move to Chelsea for him. I'm not optimistic about what's going to happen there, particularly with him losing his spot at Dortmund to Sancho.
Let's get into this.
Here. So, but I've been so impressed by Adams and him going into Leipzig and immediately winning a starting role, and not just winning a starting role, but looking really good doing it.
Winning games for them.
Yeah, no, that's been really, really impressive. I just really like his mentality. And I think that's such a big part of it that often isn't talked about because it's this nebulous thing that we can't really quantify, and we can't really even know about for the most part. But I really like his mentality. I think he's the sort of player and he's the sort of person where wherever he goes, he's going to find a way to be successful. And I'm really excited about what he's going to become.
Well, going back to Pulisic and that $70 million move, it seems like Sarri is going to be on his way out of Chelsea.
Or something, especially what happened today with Kepa.
So they're going to need a new coach. It's going to be, fond of him.
Yeah, I don't think that was a Sarri move.
It definitely wasn't. He was greeted. He said it was a surprise.
We all remember that quote, right? So, Chelsea bought Pulisic because A, he's a talented player, but B, he's a talented American player. And that's a marketable thing, and that's something that shouldn't be overlooked in this discussion, nor in the discussion of potentially future players being bought out of MLS, right? So that's an interesting factor there too. But yeah, Chelsea to me is just unstable in a lot of different ways, and that makes it hard. And he's going to have a lot of pressure when he comes in with a transfer fee of that size into a club like that. Being an American, I think there's a little bit extra weight on his shoulders, both from the American perspective, right, and from the English perspective of, here's this young Yank, he needs to come in and show us, you know what I mean? So there's that added weight there. I'm not saying he's not going to be successful. He's obviously a fantastically talented player, as he's shown on every level he's ever played at thus far. But Chelsea is a difficult club in a lot of different ways to succeed at. And so I think it's just...
Mo Salah didn't succeed there.
Exactly.
There's a bunch of
right?
guys.
De Bruyne, the list is counting.
Yeah, Lukaku.
It goes on. So, that makes me not optimistic for what maybe the next year or two of his career holds, but he's still a good player and he's still going to have a good career. Is that going to be at Chelsea? Maybe, maybe not. Would I be more optimistic about it if it was a different, more stable club? Yeah, probably.
You were hinting at it a couple minutes before. We were talking about bigger names coming to MLS and maybe leaving MLS. Florentin Pogba comes over and is now playing for Atlanta.
Yeah.
Are we going to see Griezmann maybe come over eventually? Maybe play for Miami before 2026 World Cup, because he will be like 30s by then.
He certainly hasn't been shy about his love for America. LA and Miami and Beckham and all that stuff. So, it wouldn't shock me. I don't expect it to be anytime soon, certainly. I think he's got a lot left to do in Europe and a lot of money left to make in Europe. So I don't think we'll see him anytime in the near future. But maybe when he's winding things down, I wouldn't be shocked if he comes over. And, a player of that quality, even if he's 32, 33, he's still going to be really good no matter what league he's in.
Wayne Rooney, will just be a destroyer.
Yeah. MLS gets knocked as a retirement league, but Zlatan came, and obviously he's an older player, right? But before he was injured with Man United, he was scoring plenty of goals. You know, it's not like these guys are not doing well in Europe in a lot of cases and then coming here. They're doing well in Europe and then they're coming here and they're older, but it should be no surprise that they're doing well. And I don't think it's really a slight on MLS that they're doing well at older ages either, because they've done well in other spots immediately before coming in many cases.
Georgie has Mihailovic. Pardon me if I butchered that. He's generated a lot of Mihailovic. He's generated a lot of buzz this offseason. Sam, do you think he is Europe bound? Is he destined for Europe?
Oh man, who knows? I think if everything goes well, sure, right? But you know, he's still. How many league games does he have under his belt at this point? Like about 15 or so.
I don't know if he's played a full season, has he? Yeah.
Yeah, he hasn't. He wasn't healthy last season. He came in at the end of the season, was starting to destroy and turn it on.
No, like I really like what I've seen from him, and that's no indictment on how he's played. I think what I'm trying to say is it's just so early in the process that there are so many things that could go wrong, right? So it's hard to project him maybe making a move to Europe. And even if everything goes right, you know, maybe he wants to stay. Maybe the Fire make him a huge offer. Maybe the Fire turned down a transfer bid, right? There are any million things that could happen that could prevent that. So we'll see. But, you know, I really like what he's shown thus far. He was good in limited minutes coming off of a bad injury last season, which was really, really promising. And he's going to have every opportunity in the world to do his thing this year. He's going to be the Fire's number 10. And he's going to be playing in front of Dax McCarty and Bastian Schweinsteiger, and behind Nikolic, and alongside Frankowski and Katai. So he's going to have some talents around him. He doesn't have a lot of competition in terms of that position, at least at the moment. So he's going to have every opportunity to go out there and really shred his stuff. I know the Fire are super high on him. And we'll see. You know, he's got the cool thing about it with him is it's all up to him now. You know, he's got it all in his hands. There are no structural barriers that are going to stop him from doing his thing. So as long as he stays healthy, it's entirely in his hands, and we'll see how it goes. Like, I don't know if he's the guy right now that a MLS Cup contender builds their midfield around, right? I think that's probably not me not going out very far on a limb there. But I do think he's a really promising piece, and he's one of the players I'm most excited to see what he does in 2019 in the entire league.
Yep, he scored a goal in preseason, right? It was a nice goal, and yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens this year. I think he should take a step forward. But yeah, I agree that you're right. The sample size just isn't there, but we'll see. He's generated a lot of buzz, and you're right. He has an opportunity. So
he'll be exciting to watch. We'll table the Fire conversation for a little bit right now, but we'll definitely dig into the Fire here in a little bit. I wanted to kind of go around the because Sam, you were the MLS guy. Could we go through get a sense of what to expect from the MLS season? Who's going to dominate? Who's going to struggle? Right now, I'm having a lot of doubts about Toronto FC post Giovinco.
No, I think that's totally fair. I mean, they went down to Panama against a team that doesn't exactly have much of a pedigree in Independiente, and got smacked right in the face 4-0, right?
Right.
And that was embarrassing, right? Granted, they're in a weird situation. They don't have Giovinco, they don't have Vasquez, and they haven't brought in guys to replace them yet. They will bring in guys to replace them. So this isn't quite their full team. But at the same time, that was a really bad place. And in the East, this year to me is wide open, which is good news for Fire fans, in my opinion.
And they added a playoff spot.
And they added a playoff spot, which, helps. But when I look at the East, I mean, obviously Atlanta are there at the top. They got their nose bloodied by Herediano in Champions League last week, too. They lost 3-1 in Frank de Boer's first game.
New coach, though, right?
Yeah,
and total new system.
Coach. They lost Tata Martino, brought in Frank de Boer, and they lose Miguel Almiron. And they brought in Pete Martinez.
Big losses.
I mean, they're still the most talented team on paper in the league. But there is going to be a little bit of an adjustment period. They lost their two most influential figures in their coach and their star player from last season. So there's going to be a little bit of adjustment. The Red Bulls will be good again, right? They're consistent. They're rock solid. But once you get past that, I have really big questions about almost every single team in the East.
What about the crew?
I think Columbus are probably the team that I have the fewest questions about, even though they've had the coaching change. Their roster is pretty much the same. I think they'll be in the playoffs. I don't think their ceiling's particularly high, though.
Isn't Stefan leaving? When is he leaving?
Stefan's leaving in the summertime.
Okay.
To Manchester City. So they'll have him for at least half the season. And then they'll have Joe Bendick, who they brought in.
And then
behind him.
Well, that's
Oh wow, that's
them.
yeah. We were saying the Fire should have looked at him.
Yeah, he was certainly, I'm sure, an option that they evaluated. He was on the market pretty publicly.
Who would you take, Usted or Bendick, if you had to start one?
I think they're pretty comparable. I think Usted's a little bit more consistent. I think Bendick probably has the ability to make a better highlight reel save, right? But he also has he's maybe got the lower floor, higher ceiling. And coming from where the Fire have been the last couple of seasons with their goalkeeping situation, you just kind of want someone steady back there. You know what
Absolutely.
I mean? So I get why they did what they did. I don't think there's any huge complaints there if you wanted Joe Bendick or if you wanted David Ousted. But yeah, I think the East is pretty wide open. I think Columbus and DC will be in the playoffs as well. But beyond that, you got New York City FC with a coach that did not do well at all last year in Delme Torrent, and no David Villa. No
He had some buzz.
Herrera.
He had some buzz too when he came in.
I mean, he had some buzz. The Pep Guardiola connection is real, right? And that's a nice, shiny name to put on your resume. Head coaching candidate for sure. But a lot of questions there. Montreal, I think they're a team that will get it into the playoffs this year.
They're always trying to trade Piatti.
Yeah, well, I don't think that's the case any longer. I can't remember. I think he's might be in the last year or second to last year of his contract. But it seems like they have the exit plan at this point. He's been pretty public about that. So I think he's going to be in Montreal for this whole season. Not going to be drama. And he's one of the best players in the league, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I think with Remy Gard and them having a year under their belt with him and the back line, they had a lot of injuries last year, being a little bit healthier this season. I think they'll get into the playoffs. And then, you got Toronto, and then that next tier with Toronto, who knows? They could be really good. They could be a dumpster fire.
I
They're
think
incomplete right now. Their back line, though, really concerns me.
It's signing.
But I just want to piggyback what you said about, Toronto. They could be really good or really bad. And I think that bodes the same way for the Chicago Fire. We haven't talked about them yet. I mean, the front six we went through, it looks pretty good. But I don't know how much you've watched of the preseason, Sam. But, it's kind of the same old with Dax and Schweinsteiger playing in the midfield, right? They just both want to drop in that space, and they can't really build out of the back. And when they try to build, it's a little slow. And then you have the fullback questions. But, they can push through that. So do you think those are big problems, or the Fire can potentially squeak into one of those playoff spots?
I could absolutely see the Fire making it in. I'm not going to predict them to make it in. I think them and the Union are sort of in that tier of will they or won't they? If everything goes well for the Fire, they will be a playoff team, right? You talked about the front six. It looks pretty good, right? They're adding CJ Spong is huge for depth.
Do you think he starts, or is he a sub?
I don't think he starts, but if you have an injury on either wing, or if you have an injury at forward, or if you have an international absence, or any of those things, he's the first guy, right? He's coming in off the bench at any of those three positions, and he's starting at any of those three positions if you do have an injury. So I think that's huge for them, and if he gets hot, right, maybe he can win a role. So
did they overpay?
It can go up to $450. I think it's $350 guaranteed. I don't think so, considering what the market's been for other players this winter. I think that's about right.
I think it's a solid backup striker to get.
Well, and it's Nico competition.
Like I said, that's a guy that you can start and feel good about.
Competition too.
In terms of a guy coming off the bench, that's a good option to have. And it's so much better than what they had. Because that's my main thing with the Fire. The depth. It's not there at all, right? So if you run out the first 11, that could be a pretty decent team. If Marcelo, it turns out to be pretty good. I think that's a big if. We don't know much about him. The fullbacks, we all know, you guys know that situation, right? They don't really have any. But if you're going to have a position where you don't really have any, that's not a terrible one.
They literally don't have any fullbacks. Corrales is the only true fullback. Then you have Campos, who's a converted fullback. You have Nico Hasler, who's a converted fullback. And you have Edwards, who is a converted fullback.
Out of those four guys, Sam, who do you think by the end of the year might still be a starter?
I think Hasler. Hasler and Corrales. I mean, those are the guys that started in the preseason game yesterday, which is sort of the dress rehearsal for the opener.
The dress rehearsal was poor.
Yeah, no, it wasn't great. And I didn't get to watch, so I can't talk about it too much. But, I think those are probably the guys that I would see sticking in a starting role. But we'll see. These things change. But back to the Fire, I mean, that front six is good, right? I like it. I think they're pretty solid. The big questions for me, can Bastion and Dax stay young? If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Healthy.
Do they have another year in them, right? Yeah. Because if they do, then I think that front six will be pretty solid. If they don't, then things will fall apart real quickly for this team. And then the other big question is the center backs, right? You know what you have in Kappelhoff, pretty solid player that was left completely on an island almost entirely in 2018.
Yep.
If Marcelo can be good, if he's a solid option next to Kappelhoff, then I think you're looking at a team that can contend for the playoffs if they stay healthy. Because if you have any sort of major injuries, it ain't going to be good because the depth ain't there. And so if they stay healthy and if Marcelo is good and if Dax and Bastion can keep it going, then this is a team that can make some noise. That's a lot of ifs.
I have another if to add. And what is Pano going to play? How is he going to play these guys? You know, for the last 3 years, we've been saying this on the show, like, what is this guy's tactics? What does he bring tactically, man management wise, all that stuff? So
sure.
I think this is a big year for Bono, and we got to see his fingerprints beyond this team. And I think his choices of the way he wants to play these guys is going to be a big determining factor of their success, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think this team sets up pretty naturally in a 4-2-3-1 setup. And I think it did when they were healthy last season. The problem was they weren't healthy last season. And so you had Paunovic trying to plug holes all over the place, and the team was never really able to develop identity because he was changing things so often, right? And for a while, that allowed the team to tread water, right? The first half of the season was decent, or at least it wasn't terrible, right? Mm-hmm. I think they were in 6th place in June or July, right? So things were going at least acceptably. They were in position to make a run. And then it kind of fell off. And when you change all the time and you don't have that foundation that you can lean back on, it just becomes more difficult as the season goes along. But at the same time, the roster he was working with was not good, you know? And whose fault is that? Nelson. I don't know. Is it Nelson? Is it Pano? Is it a combo of both? Probably the latter, right? And how do you assign blame there? No one really knows because no one really knows whose fingerprints are in which move. But, you know, when you have injuries and when you don't have depth like the Fire did last season, it's going to be a struggle. And I actually think Pano did a decent job in the first half of the year, just keeping things afloat. And then when they weren't able to really add anything in the summertime, that was kind of the death knell.
You know, one gripe I do have is that, you know, we didn't get a lot of tape on Campbell or Lillard. You know, and then Vincent was kind of stunted by playing center back. And so that center back thing, you know, you didn't see any growth from those guys. Really, I think you saw Brant Bronico and maybe Georgie were the only young guys that maybe Campos.
That's a completely fair critique.
Maybe he was putting it together with duct tape, though.
The fact that the Fire had a couple young defenders just, literally quit playing soccer instead of coming back is not a promising thing. And, you know, I think there are valid criticisms of Pano in terms of man management and his ability to kind of bring a locker room together. I think he's had some problems with that, you know, and that's typical in some cases, right? Particularly on a losing team. Mm-hmm. You're not going to be getting along with the coach if you ain't playing or if the team's losing. But, you know, really getting that locker room in a better place is a big task for him this year. And, you know, we'll see. Like, this start is really important, in my opinion, for the Fire. Because if they start well and you can get things rolling a little bit, then that's all good. But if you start poorly, then how quickly do the memories of last season come out? How quickly do those bad vibes come back? And can you recover from that?
And when do you see the bad body language start to take over the field? One thing that Bobby Warshaw talks about is body language of players. He was commenting about it the other day with Toronto and how some player got cleared out, and the only player that went to go help this player up was Michael Bradley. And he was kind of pointing out how it was kind of maybe there's issues in the locker room over in Toronto and that you could kind of see in their body language. So one thing I'm going to wonder about, like, you know, throughout the years, what body language we should look out for these guys. Because you could see Basti being frustrated.
Oh, my God. Katai, you really can see the body language of these guys.
Have you have any ideas like that?
I mean, I think it's pretty apparent most of the time whether or not a team is fighting for each other or not, you know. It's how hard they're working. It's how together they are. All of those kind of qualitative judgments that you can make when you're just watching them and seeing them and seeing how hard they fight for each other and seeing if they have each other's backs, right? And so that's why I think the start is so important, because I think this thing could get toxic pretty quick, like it did last season, if they have a bad.
Is that Schweinsteiger and Pano? Is it just it's got to be hard to manage a team when you have someone like Schweinsteiger in the locker room, right? Is that just that tension maybe?
I would disagree with that. I think Sebastian Schweinsteiger has been pretty universally known as a good locker room guy.
Okay.
Oh, yeah,
okay.
absolutely.
Cool. No.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
And admittedly, I can't stand when media people go, "Oh, he's a good dude" or whatever, because 99.9% of the time we don't know these people at all.
Mm-hmm.
We watch them during training, and we talk to them for 10 minutes every however often we interview them, and they're incentivized to be on their best behavior then. Mm-hmm. We don't know if they're a good dude, but from what I've heard from his teammates, from people around him within the club, having off-record, on-background conversations where there's no real reason to juice him up, or at least less of a reason than there would be on the record. Mm-hmm. Everyone really likes Bastian, and he takes some of the younger guys under his wing.
It's awesome.
And he's been a positive force. So,
it's good.
And I think Pano and him have had a good relationship in the past. Pano was obviously a big reason why he came in the first place, in terms of his recruitment. I don't know where exactly that stood at the end of last year. Obviously, it was a difficult season. I'm sure Bastian was not thrilled with playing center back all the time. So
what do you think about Dak? Sometimes he looks frustrated.
Yeah, I mean, how do you not get frustrated when you have a season like last year,
mm-hmm.
right? Like, who wouldn't be frustrated with that? I know the fans were frustrated. I'm sure you guys were pissed off about it.
Absolutely.
Right?
The season before would have been a lot easier for us to start
back. It was
to
such a
cover.
big step back from a playoff building, from making the playoffs, and that big of a step back. It didn't make sense. It's like it was unnecessary.
Well, it shows you how thin the margins can be when you don't have that depth, right? Mm. The Fire, in a lot of ways, plugged holes a little bit, and I don't even want to say that, but it was almost like high risk moves, right? Yeah. Because of age and injury history and fit within the team, and they weren't able to get deals across the line that they needed to get done last winter to really build on the success of 2017.
Deals. We called it a high wire act. What they were doing at times.
That's a good way to put it. In 2017, things hit, right? People stayed healthy, everything was rolling, everything was good, and then you sort of had that Akam drama and the Bastian injury, and we saw what happened at the end of the season, and things fell off, right? And in 2018, you enter with a very similar group, right? You sub in Katai for Akam, right? But otherwise, pretty similar group, and you have injuries, and you have guys that didn't perform to the level they performed the year before, and things fall apart. So when you don't have the depth that other teams in MLS have, the margins for error, the margins for injury, for players having a down year, they're a lot thinner. And the Fire didn't have that depth. And with the age of the signings that they made, they're playing that high wire act. So I think there's an element to that again this year. But, if everything clicks, we've seen what they can be. But it's just, again, I've said it before, there are a lot of ifs.
Especially with depth probably mattering a little bit more this year than the other seasons with the compressed schedule of MLS.
Yep.
Why did they let Campbell, Drew Counter go? I mean, I felt like those, there's guys that they just kind of let walk that could have been nice depth and reserve roles.
The only really puzzling one to me on that front was Campbell. Mm-hmm. Is he a starting center back for a good team in MLS? No. I don't think. Mm-hmm. Apologies to Jonathan Campbell if he's listening. I'm not trying to hurt your feelings, but is he a guy that can be your third or fourth? Yeah, and is he pretty cheap? Yeah, but at the same time, they've had him for what I believe that last year was his third season.
Yeah.
So at the same time, if a coach doesn't like a guy and he's at that level, you can theoretically bring in a replacement. Without too much trouble. I mean, for me, that one was puzzling because he's not an international and he was on a good salary number. And, he's a solid third or fourth option at center back, which you need. So I didn't really get that one, but I can't really, that's not going to make or break the Fire season. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
U.S. Open Cup is another thing they got to worry about, too.
Well, it's just a head-scratcher for depth, It's just like you said, it seems like a cheap guy that you could just, have be your third, fourth center back, and they really haven't filled that role yet. Even the reserves or the
that they haven't filled it.
There's no reserves or stubs.
That's the thing with a lot of the Fire's things. Is they haven't gotten signings over the line.
And why make more holes?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So I don't really have an answer to that.
Well, we'll get back and finish up our little preview of the East here. I don't think we've talked about Cincinnati yet.
Sure, yeah.
What do I some people kind of peg them as a middling team. I think they're going to struggle. Where do you have them at?
Yeah, I think they're going to struggle too. I mean, I think it's when I look at Cincinnati, there are a few different things that stand out. First is an organization that had a ton of success in USL, both on the field and off the field, and I think at certain levels thought that they could carry that over with a lot of the same group, and that's, I think, a pretty naive approach in MLS.
The Minnesota approach?
So they kept a lot of their USL players.
I mean, Minnesota brought, I think, 4 or 5 guys from their NASL team, right? Cincinnati bringing, I think, 10 or 11, right? That's a huge difference. And so I think that's a little bit naive, but at the same time, right, the other side of that coin is, okay, there's continuity, right? You have the same coach, you have those same 10, 11 guys for your locker room culture, so you can hit the ground running at a higher level maybe than Minnesota did when they were such a disaster at the start of their expansion season, right? So that's when I look at Cincinnati, that sort of encapsulates it, right? Are they going to be as bad as Minnesota were? No, probably not. Although Minnesota finished their season pretty strongly in 2017, it should be pointed out.
Do you think they're going to have a good season this season, Minnesota?
Potentially. You know, they're kind of similar to the Fire, in my opinion, where, you know, they don't have a ton of depth and they need some key signings to pan out. But back to Cincinnati, I think they're going to be a team that really fights. They obviously have a strong focus on defending and countering. They don't really have an attacking player that can pull a string or make a pass, but they have plenty that can run at you and win set pieces in battle.
Don't they have really good attendance? Isn't that like their thing?
So, and they play on turf, and so they're going to be tough at home. I really think they're going to be tough at home.
Turf.
So you know they're going to be a team that tries to grind it out. They're not going to be playing pretty soccer at all. But you know, if things go well for them, they're winning a lot of games 2-1, 1-0, scrappy dogfight type games at home, and on the road they're just making things as difficult as possible on their opponent, and maybe they can pick up a result here or there. And if things go well, I think it's like 40 points, and like they set a culture, and there's a lot to build on next year with another big signing or two. But if things don't, that's not a very good ceiling, right? And if things don't go well, they're probably going to be among the worst teams in the league, and you know, maybe blowing things up at the end of the season.
Cincinnati should go target Gonzalo Higuain. Say, hey, you'd be a couple miles down the street from your brother.
Yeah, I think they're dealing at that level of investment.
Oh my God, you need $70 million.
Let's go on the other side of the of our nation here and talk about LA Galaxy. What do you think about their 4DP situation, expectations this year with Zlatan, and what are overall thoughts with the Galaxy?
So the 4DP situation obviously will be resolved within the next few days. Roster compliance is coming up very quickly. I don't know this for sure, but kind of the expectation of folks around the league is that Gio Dos Santos is going to be on the team and won't be a designated player. And no one really knows exactly how that's going to get done right now. But he'll be probably at $1.5 million a year and bought down with targeted allocation money. And who the hell knows in terms of next year if there's buyout or if it's $1.5 million over 4 years or whatever it ends up looking like. The expectation is that he will be on the team. And then in terms of what we should see from the Galaxy this year, I fully expect them to be a playoff team. Last year everything that could go wrong went wrong for the Galaxy last year pretty much, and they should have made the playoffs still, barring a disaster of a second half in the finale against Houston. They're in the playoffs. And in the current format, they finished 7th. They are in the playoffs, even with that, right? So there's no reason to think that things should be as bad as they were last year. I think they kind of hit on a solid formula at the end, playing a 4-4-2 type thing with Zlatan and Ola Kamara up top and Sebastian Lletget and Jonathan Dos Santos in the middle. I think they obviously have a more stable situation.
Yes,
in terms
so
of
where is
their head
Gio
coach.
going to play?
Yeah, that's the question.
And he's kind of fallen off. I mean, so
So first off, is he going to be on the team, right? Like, I think he is, but we don't know for sure yet. And if he is, then I'm not really sure. You could play him out wide. You could bring him off the bench. You could let him figure it out. You can kind of start the season in that 4-4-2 and kind of slow play it, right? And see where Gio fits. But yeah, I don't know. That is the big question. And that for me is like, okay, why don't you just buy him out now? But, we'll see. We'll see how that unfolds. But the other part is, their center back situation should be better. They added a new guy, Diego Polenta. He played alongside Daniel Steres in their preseason finale yesterday. And when they had Daniel Steres and Dave Romney, who no one would confuse for MLS All-Stars, playing center back at the end of the year instead of Jorgen Skjelvik and Michael Ciani, they automatically got a lot better just from that, right? So if you upgrade that position for the course of the season, if you upgrade the center midfield for the course of the season, just by playing the proper players in that position, then I think they won't have any trouble making the playoffs. And if they make the playoffs in a single elimination game, I want Zlatan on my team. I don't know about you guys.
I wanted to say this. Zlatan, when healthy, that guy's a top 20 striker in the world.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's really good.
Yeah,
and it's not like, and it's like he's getting older, but it's not like pace is his thing, He said that's not how he plays. So he still can do what he does, even at this age. I have a question. We were talking about the West a little bit. Who are your top favorites in the West?
Seattle, Portland, Kansas City, LAFC, I think are my top 4. I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Galaxy got in there and made some noise. Those are certainly my top 5, and I think you can pretty much write those teams in pen in as playoff teams, like right from the jump, which is something you cannot say about the East. I feel confident about all those teams, even if they do have injuries. All of them have pretty solid depth. All of them have pretty solid coaching for the most part. All of them have good rosters. All of them have spent money. I feel good about them being in the playoffs. And then sort of beyond that, I think Houston's an interesting team. A lot of good attacking talent there. I think Salt Lake is similar. A lot of good attacking talent. I think both teams have some holes, particularly in the back, that they're going to need to figure out, but both have really strong home field advantages, not necessarily in terms of crowd, but in terms of climate in Houston and elevation in Salt Lake City. Both those teams historically are fantastic at home. And then I think you kind of have some, Minnesota, who we talked a little bit about earlier, is a team that should be better. Colorado should certainly be better than they were last year.
Tim Howard last season?
This is his last season, yes. He announced that this will be his last season about a month ago. So, Colorado is an interesting one to me. They added some pieces, obviously Kai Kamara, Diego Rubio from Kansas City, Benny Feilhaber, Kellen Acosta, his first full season with the team. So they added some pieces there that will be an upgrade over what they had last season. And then, they have 2 DPs coming off the books at the end of the season in Howard and Shkel Zangashi. So they'll have some money to play with in 2020. So I think the Rapids could be a team that, all right, maybe they finish 8th or 9th this season in the West, but we could be talking this time next year and looking at the Rapids and saying, okay, they didn't make the playoffs, but I like where this team's going, and I like their odds in 2020 to really get in that mix. And then you got FC Dallas as well, a team that's perennially been in the playoffs, right?
How have we not mentioned them?
Yeah, so, Dallas is doing some weird stuff this winter. I'm not exactly sure what's going on down there. I have not heard great things about Pablo Aranguiz in terms of his quality, their Mauro Diaz replacement. I have heard nice things about Paxton Pomykal, who looks like he's going to be the starter over Aranguiz.
Pomykal?
Yeah, Paxton Pomykal. He's one to keep your eye on if you're in that Play Your Kids camp or young American interested in him. So, keep an eye on him this season. But Dallas is a weird one to me. I don't think their attack's going to be very good at all. But their defense was one of the best in the league last year. And they returned pretty much everybody from it. You got Matt Hedges, you got Rito Ziegler, you got Carlos Gruezo as your 6, and you got, I'm blanking, Reggie Cannon, young U.S. international right back, and Marquinhos Pedrosa, who's a solid left back in this league. So, I don't think they're going – it's weird. I'm not optimistic about what they're doing in the attack. I'm not high on it at all. They have a new coach in Luchi Gonzalez. But their defense should be good, and if you have a good defense, you're going to be around, right? So we'll see. They're kind of one that I'm struggling to put a finger on. But I'm not going to pick them to make the playoffs, I don't think.
Who is your favorite to win the MLS Golden Boot this year? Can Martinez back up what he did from last season?
Yeah, he's my favorite. Just in terms of, the finishing that he's had throughout, not just last season, but even his first season in MLS when he missed a decent amount of time due to injuries. Finishing rate is the same. He's scoring the goal almost every single game.
He's done
and so he's done that for 50 games, and he has a ton of talent around him. The thing about Joseph, obviously, this year is that he does not have Miguel Almiron anymore. The other thing about it is that he's got P.T. Martinez now. So it's not like he's, now they play slightly different positions. They obviously don't have the same chemistry that Joseph and Miguel had by the end of their run together. So that's going to take some time to develop. So I wouldn't be surprised if he took a minor step back. I still think he's the odds-on favorite. But, Zlatan's out here talking a big game, talking about how he wants to break every single MLS record, too.
Yeah, but what about Hector Villalba's still there, right? And
yeah, Tito Villalba's coming off the bench,
and
which is
what?
crazy.
That's crazy. And Barco, and don't they have a young U.S. kid who's with red hair, Carlton?
Yeah. We need to slow the roll on him a bit. I don't think he's going to play much at all this year. But maybe I'll be wrong. But, yeah, let's wait and see before we get too excited about him, in my opinion.
Who else would be the Golden Boot people? Yeah, Yassi Zardes maybe, Nikolic.
Are the two that jump out right away. Bradley Ray Phillips is always in the mix.
BWP.
He always scores a ton of goals. Nikolic will probably score 15 to 20 again. I don't think that's going to be in the Golden Boot mix, but that should be in the the top 5-6 mix.
We're sleeping on Rui Diaz.
Yeah, Rui Diaz should be good, man. He should be good. Again, I think he'll be up there in that 20 range. Mm-hmm. Moro Manotas is a guy I really like in Houston, who has some really talented players behind him, serving him up some good opportunities. And shoot, Giassi Zardes had 19 goals last year.
Yes, yep.
What?
Peralta got the best out of him for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and he put him in good positions.
Where did that come from?
Giassi he doesn't have the greatest feet in the world, right? But he does put himself in good spots when he's playing striker. And
it's like another Josie Altidore.
In those good areas, he's going to be finishing some of them. So I think that was just volume scorer sort of situation last year. And I wouldn't be surprised if that didn't really change this season. But yeah, I think those are kind of the big names, right? Joseph and Zlatan, I think, will be duking it out for the title. And then that notch below them, BWP, Manotas, Rui Diaz, Nikolic, maybe Zardes. And if Portland do sign their striker, maybe Portland, maybe whoever that ends up being. And then, if Josie can stay healthy, he'll probably be in there too. But
Rooney. We haven't talked about Rooney yet. Yeah.
Rooney.
We have not mentioned Rooney. Jesus, what an oversight there.
Yeah. Yeah, Rooney's got a chance.
If he stays healthy, he'll be in. And Lucho Acosta is with DC for the whole season.
That was nuts, Wayne Rooney. What Wayne Rooney did, he just came in and he just took him into it's nuts. Like the performance, he was just scoring goals from the bottom to the top. It was nuts. Dude, and people were doubting this guy. I'm like, he's Wayne Rooney.
Playing every single game at home, right?
Yep.
And that's something Portland is going to be doing this year. So Portland they're going to sign a DP striker at some point. It's a question, I think, of when, not if, right? So we could see something similar with the Timbers this year if that's a summertime move, because they play their first 12 games on the road when they're
Carlos Vela.
Their stadium.
Oh, Carlos Vela.
So if they go out and spend $7 million on a DP striker, and that guy arrives as soon as they start playing home games, we might have a similar situation. But yeah, no, Rooney's another one that I can't believe I forgot.
Another one, Carlos Vela was just floated, but I feel like he might be more playmaker-esque.
Yeah. I mean, just in terms of where he lines up on the field.
Same as Rooney, though. Rooney could kind of suffer from the same thing. He might be kind of called to create a bit more than to maybe finish.
He could, but
Rooney could do it all.
But you got Acosta.
He's got Acosta behind him, and he was lining up more as their striker. So I'm a little less worried about that. But Vela is playing a lot. He's not a striker, right? Mm-hmm. He's playing either as a 10, which he did a lot last year, or on the wing, which he did a lot last year. So just by the very nature of where he's lining up.
We haven't said this name yet. What do you think of Nani coming into the league?
Oh, Nani, very Orlando signing.
Yeah.
Right there. He speaks Portuguese. He's famous.
Four letters.
A little bit over the hill. Not to say he's not a good player, just not, obviously not in his prime. I think he'll come in if he stays healthy. He should be good, right? He's obviously got a lot of talent. But at the same time, it's like if you're Orlando and you have so many holes, I don't know if that's where I would be spending my money. It seems very like them to feel the pressure and go out and make a splash signing and spend a lot of money and maybe a little overreach. And if things go right, it'll work out and it'll be worth it. But if things don't go right, it could blow up your team for 2 years.
Oh, snap.
And so it's just there's not patience with that club at all, and it's hurt them time and time again over their first 4 years in MLS.
Oh, okay. We definitely want to break into the fire here because we're getting close here. But before we do, we talked briefly about Pulisic leaving, Pulisic going over for $70 million. Adams leaving. Can MLS compete with the major markets? would promotion relegation change things? Is it time to ditch GAM TAM and the DP's model? And what could possibly replace it? I know we just opened up a whole can of worms there.
Yeah, there's a lot of different angles to attack there. So the one thing looming over all of this is the CBA, which expires after this season. So it could look totally different this time next year, right? Depending on how those negotiations go. Is it time to ditch GAM and TAM in the DP spots? When I talk to GMs around the league, they want it gone, right? A lot of them say, just give me a floor in terms of what I can spend and give me a ceiling.
More like American sport.
Yeah. Salary cap stuff.
And they're like a lot of them now hit back, like, when I ask them, are you going to sign a DP? They're like, well, like, I don't know. Like, it might be a TAM guy. It might be a DP. Like, it's going to be over budget. It's not going to be over $1.5 million salary a year. I don't know. They're like, it's an over budget player. So, like, I think it's on us as media, on me, to start talking about it in terms of those terms, right? Because there are two different kinds of DPs. There are the ones that can be bought down with TAM, and there are the ones that can't. So personally, I think a good way to do it would be to kind of get rid of GAM, get rid of TAM, have that salary floor and have that salary ceiling, but keep DPs.
The Gio Dos Santos thing presents a wrinkle where maybe an opportunity to change things.
Yeah, I mean, like, they're not going to change anything until the CBA is up, right? But it's an argument, right? So I think you keep the DPs because you want to keep spending money in the transfer market, right? And if you're spending like Atlanta and you're spending $17 and $16 million on Martinez, PT Martinez, and Barco, well, you're not going to be able to do that unless if you have like a $22 million ceiling. You know what I mean? And maybe how do the fees get accounted for? I don't know, right? But I think you do need to have some sort of mechanism that allows teams to go out and really splash on transfers, because those guys. We don't know PT Martinez's salary, but Barco's salary, Almiron's salary, the Fire have two guys that made more money than those guys did, right? Like, they're not making tons and tons of money. It's just their fees are really high, and that's why they're designated players. So I would like to see something where you give teams a little bit more autonomy and give teams a little bit more freedom and in terms of how they want to construct their roster, while still allowing them a mechanism to go out and spend a lot of money in the transfer market, because I think that's something that's really driving the growth of the league.
So why was there that report that they might take a DP spot away?
Yeah, so that was actually my report way back in the summer.
Oh, there you go.
And I don't think it's going to happen. It was something that they were discussing at the time. But that was all about kind of reallocation of where money is spent. It wouldn't have really lessened the overall spend for most teams. Right? Because most teams aren't spending $15 million on transfers. For teams that are, it would have lessened the overall spend, because that DP spot taken away would have been accompanied by an increase in TAM. So it just would have been trying to make the rosters less top-heavy, essentially, and kind of spread the wealth down a little bit and make those spots, players 4 through 9 on the roster, raise the quality there, and maybe you lose a little quality in spot number 3, potentially. But it's going to be compensated for with the 8th, 9th, 10th best player on the roster being that much better. So that was kind of the idea there, was to kind of smooth things out, make the rosters a little bit more even. I don't think that's going to happen, though. So we'll see. I mean, all that stuff's up in the air at the moment, right? Everything is on the bargaining table when it comes to a CBA. We'll see where the league wants to take it, because they'll drive the discussion, or at least if history repeats itself, because historically the league has dominated these labor negotiations over the Players Association. So we'll see how it goes, and I think it's going to be really interesting. And there are a lot of reasons that the MLSPA, good reasons that makes it difficult for them to negotiate.
Well, the upcoming TV deal hasn't been sealed yet too, so that's definitely another wrinkle.
Yeah, no, everything's a wrinkle, right? So it's that's a huge thing.
Chicago struggling is a wrinkle. I think.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that's going to be a collectively bargained wrinkle, right? But that's something that ownership's cognizant of on a league-wide basis. And it's not just Chicago. Like, New England's probably in that mix too.
Yeah.
And maybe some other markets as well, perhaps Dallas or Colorado, right? But they have slightly different models. So they're doing more with their academies probably than the Fire or the Refs. So it's a little bit different there. But yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. like I was saying earlier, a lot has changed for this league this winter.
Oh, yeah.
The implications are pretty far-reaching, in my opinion. And the CBA is going to be the same thing with a lot more changes and a lot more implications next winter.
MLS has evolved a lot, really, in like the last 3 to 4 years. I feel like it's the most growth
since Tam came in. Really.
Yeah, it's been the biggest amount of like change, and they're finally starting to catch on a bit more. They're getting more foothold in America. Really, we're starting to see that. But so speaking of that, a foothold, this is our last bit before we get into a little fire stuff here. Just the last bit of international MLS stuff.
Send us your fire questions.
Send us your fire questions. Can an MLS team win the CONCACAF Champions League, and who's the best suited?
Oh man, so obviously we have a little bit of information now. Leg one of the round of 16 series has been played. Can an MLS team win? Absolutely, right? They were very, very close last season. Like, right on the doorstep. Toronto lost in penalty kicks. Probably should have beaten Chivas. That obviously didn't happen. I liked Atlanta's chances before the start of the tournament. I like them less now that they've lost 3-1 in the first leg of their round 16 series. But no, I think it's a matter of time at this point, because you have teams like Atlanta, and historically it's been, why can't an MLS team beat Liga MX in the Champions League? Well, spending is a big reason, right? Liga MX teams have spent more. Liga MX teams don't spend more than Atlanta, right? That spend is distributed a little bit more evenly over their roster. But when you look at Atlanta, they have 8-9 guys over that, like basically at $1 million or more in terms of salary, right? So that's impressive. And if they're healthy, they should be able to make a run. When I look at the schedule here, things are lining up pretty well for Sporting Kansas City to make a solid run. So they're up 3-0 against Toluca right now, going to Toluca for the second leg. They'll have probably Independiente instead of Toronto FC. They shouldn't have much trouble with Independiente. And then you get Monterrey most likely, or maybe Atlanta, maybe Herediano in the semifinals. And so I like where they're going. The Red Bulls are another one that could get in there. They have a little bit of a tougher path because they'll have to play Santos Laguna in the next round. So that'll be a tougher step for them. But if they advance past that, then they'll have Tigres probably in the semis. So I think those are the teams probably with the pedigree in terms of having an established veteran core that knows how to win, having the talent, having the coaching staff, having the maturity to really go get it. And I would put Atlanta in that mix, but they have a hole to dig themselves out of. And they would have Monterrey if they advance to the next round.
Okay, cool. All right, let's talk a little fire here to end up the show. You guys watching, please feel free to send us in your questions, and we can ask Sam here.
Toss a like and subscribe, too. Thanks for coming to the show. And toss a like for Sam for coming on. Appreciate you coming on, Sam, by the way. Thanks for taking the time with us.
Yeah, no, thanks. It's been fun, guys.
I kind of want to ask, pick your brain on how the Gutman situation. What are your thoughts on that, and how that whole thing played out?
Yeah, so I don't have all the information there, so I don't want to make too much of a judgment. From what I understand, the Fire did end up making a pretty competitive offer by the end of it. And did they make that offer soon enough? Maybe not. But it's been tough. The Fire aren't the most attractive destination at the moment, and that's just a fact. Considering how I don't even want to say the last few years, how the last almost decade has gone.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
And how they've managed. So when you have a player like Gutman who has a good opportunity to go abroad, that obviously has hit some snags here since with his work permit status and loans and things like that. But when you have a good opportunity there, that's something that you have to consider even in the best of times for your homegrown club, right, from the player side of things. So the Fire aren't in the best of times, and so when you get a good offer, and if Chicago don't come in and keep it as competitive as they should, which I think is, at the end, I think they got there, but at the beginning, I don't know if they were in that spot, then, you get situations like this. So, that's when you wish the Fire were able to get over the line.
That's what I'm saying. Like, as a fan, that what if factor. I mean, can you imagine if Polster and Gutman were still on this team? Then, like on paper, you'd be like, oh my gosh. I mean, and that's what's frustrating as a fan.
For that matter, right?
Oh yeah, Brandon Vincent as well.
Yeah. So yeah, you'd feel a lot better. We wouldn't be talking about the team having no fullbacks, right?
Exactly.
So, like I said, I don't know all the specifics of the Gutman situation. I think it's been pretty well documented by my friend Art, and if you guys aren't following him, with him, Paul Tenorio.
Well, we absolutely follow Paul.
Yeah, no, so yeah, he's obviously well known.
Hey, if you could tell him if we'd totally love to have him on the show.
Get him on.
Just mention, hey, we were on with the guys. They were pretty nice.
Yeah, they were nice.
Well, ask him, tell him to talk to me. These guys
Yeah, definitely. Vote him. We asked.
Yeah, so Paul's got a better feel for that one. He's written about it pretty extensively. So, but without knowing all the circumstances, I can absolutely say that that's one that the Fire, you would love for them to get over the line, and probably they should have. But here we are. They didn't.
We were talking about the Fire a little bit earlier. We were talking about the front six, but that back line we started talking about. But Sam, can you just comment on that back line? Do you think they will add maybe in the summer or maybe in this window, whatever they can do right now? Do you think they'll add to that back line now, maybe later, and will it be able to hold up?
They absolutely need to add to it. I would expect them to do that sooner rather than later. They need help at center back and a fullback. I think they have their starters for center back in Marcelo and Kapelhoff, but you need more than two. And I believe Grant Lillard is the third right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I would be overly confident in that if I'm Chicago, if he's kind of my third. And I don't even know who the fourth is off the top of my head.
I don't. Yeah.
So, yeah, they need to go out.
Schweinsteiger.
I heard Axel Schoberg down in Colorado was a potential shout maybe a few years back, but he kind of disappeared.
Yeah, I mean, that's the Rapids have all sorts of center back injury issues right now, so they are not looking to get rid of any.
Right.
I would expect them to go out and get another, and maybe even a high-profile one.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll
in
see.
league or outside of league?
I would say outside of league is more likely. Center backs within the league that are established are really expensive, and people aren't willing to part ways with them, right? Mm-hmm. Like, if you guys have a good center back, why would you want to get rid of him?
Iko Para was available.
Iko Para was available, but we saw what he cost, $900,000 in allocation money.
Yeah, it's
That's
nuts.
A lot.
That's
and
nuts.
And you know what? He wanted to be traded because he needed a raise, right? So you're going to have to pay him, too, on top of that. And that's a guy with lengthy injury history.
Ooh.
Now, it's the injury history of the sort where it's like kind of random. It's concussions, it's an Achilles. It's not like he has a bad knee that keeps flaming up, right? It's different things every time. And he's been healthy the last 2 years, but, I can understand being wary of going out and getting him, particularly for that price, because you're going to have to then give him a raise, and he turns into a $1.7, $1.8 million player in terms of allocation money spent and salary. So I get it. I get why you might not want to go there. That being said, that's a good window into, I think, an issue that's plagued the Fire under Nelson Rodriguez is that they can sometimes be a little too cautious in the transfer market, and they stick to their valuations. And it's good to have a system of valuations. But if that system of valuations consistently leads you to a place where you're not getting deals that you need to get done, then maybe you need to change that. And to give Nelson Rodriguez credit, which I know is not a popular thing to do among Chicago Fire fans, he at least said kind of after the season that he, was cognizant of that and maybe needing to change it, right? So, at least that maybe there's a little bit of room for growth there, but we haven't really seen it thus far. So we'll see. I mean, they have more work to do on that back line and in depth as a whole. You would like them to be farther along than they are. They're not. But that being said, they're not in a terrible position right now.
According to Guillermo, we are trying to wrap up one more deal. I don't know if you know anything about that. By the way, shout out to Alan.
I don't know anything about that specifically, but I would not. I mean, it makes sense, right?
And you think it's going to be a center back? I don't know why. I feel like they should put the resources into a fullback.
One of those two. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm building a team, in terms of overall needs, fullback, they need a fullback maybe more. But in terms of position, like which one's more important? Center back's more important, right?
Absolutely. So why did they go get CJ Sapong then and put those resources into potentially a backup striker?
Well, I mean, I think it's a situation where these things can be happening in concert with each other, right? Okay. I would assume they wouldn't have gone to get CJ Sapong if that prevented them from going and helping along the back line, right? Okay. They still have the room to go out and make that addition, and they still needed the depth up top too. So if you can get both of them done, then get both of them done, right? It's not one or the other,
Okay.
I would imagine, in this situation.
We got a couple chat comments. So since the Fire did not utilize the draft, how do you see the Fire growing talent? Is our academy any good?
I'm by no means an academy expert, but I think it's fair to say the Fire's academy is not as good as it should be.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are a lot of reasons for that. There are a lot of historical kind of issues for that. I don't know if you guys grew up playing club soccer.
He played for the Magic, and he played with Harry Shipp.
Oh, Harry Shipp was a year above me.
You played Magic?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, right?
And with
Magic
Duty,
and
Josh Duty.
Patrick Duty?
Duty was a year ahead of me on he was 91. No, he was 90, 91. Anyways.
So I grew up losing to those teams with my club.
Where'd you play for?
I played for Palatine Celtic.
Oh, okay.
So
losing to those teams.
Yeah, so
dude, we could talk Chicago soccer too.
Yeah, no, exactly. So it's like soccer's and Magic have
soccer's Magic,
yeah. Right? And FC United is a player in that game too, where they have a lot of the old Fire staff.
Roadrunners are decent club.
So there are a lot of good teams in the area, and the Fire have not been able to go in and become the dominant team on the academy level. They've done it on certain age groups in certain years, right? They've won a national title, I think, on the U18 level a few years back. But they haven't been able, for whatever reason, to really come in and put their stamp down, like in FC Dallas, right? Or like, this isn't really, this is more apples and oranges, like a Real Salt Lake, who don't have that competition in their own market, right? Or even like the New York Red Bulls, right? Who maybe, there's room for a few clubs to exist and be really good in New York, but the Red Bulls have found their style and found their system and put enough emphasis on the academy where it's panned out. So there are a million different reasons, right, and a million different factors that go into this. I think the main one is really organizational emphasis and investment, and maybe the Fire aren't there in terms of, just the academy level. And Chicago produces pros. There are plenty of guys around the league that are from Chicago.
Spectre, Jed Zahner, who else? Gazan, Grabavoy.
Yeah, Spectres and Grabavoy and like those guys, they're from before the Fire Academy existed, right? But there are younger, like Cam Lindley, like Andrew Gutman, guys like that are coming of age now that aren't on the Fire, and that to me is an issue. That's something that they need to correct. At the same time, if you want to make the academy good, you have to invest a lot of money into it. And so here's the thing. If you don't think you're going to get a return on that investment, I can understand it sort of. I think it's a bad strategy in the long term. I think it's a bad play, and I think it's something the teams shouldn't be doing. But if I'm putting myself in the guy who's spending the money's shoes, I can sort of understand. Well, do I want to spend $3 million on a transfer? Or do I want to spend $1.5 million on a transfer and $1.5 million more on the academy? What am I going to get a better return out of, right? So, none of these things happen in a vacuum. I do wish the Fire were in a place with their infrastructure and where their academy could really be producing a lot of pros and really be a driver of the team. And that's not speaking as a fan or a journalist. That's speaking as just somebody from Chicago who grew up playing and who knows how good the players are there.
I got to say this. Take a look at Chicago hockey after the Blackhawks got good. They got boosted. All of a sudden, you see players like Kendall Coyne coming out of Carl Sandburg in Orland Park, and you got other players coming out of Chicago. She's being a female player, but still, I mean, you got pro hockey players coming out. You had some buddies, Connor Carrick. So it's just we saw the elevation of Cubs baseball. I'm sure it gets kids playing baseball, but the lack of a media presence in Chicago, I think, hurts the Fire and their development with their academy. If they had maybe a bigger, larger media presence, maybe they were talked about more on the radio, maybe they would be more of an option for these guys, or maybe seen as the go-to place.
I agree with that to an extent. I think, right, if you're a kid coming up in, say, like Atlanta, who have a good academy, right? And Atlanta's drawing 75,000 fans or 50,000 on average a game. And they're a cool thing, and people are wearing their jerseys to school. Of course you want to go play for them if you can, right?
Right.
Where the Fire aren't that entity. Is that because of a lack of media coverage, or is that because of a lack of, just general fan interest in Chicago? Well, I mean, those things are probably tied together, right? But, if the Fire were cooler, if they were more of a thing, would it be easier to get kids, get the best kids, and get them from soccer and get them from Magic? Yeah, of course.
I think
right?
so.
But
like,
that's so
like,
it's so
still,
strange.
It's not like the Red Bulls are some huge entity within New York in their region. You know what I mean? You don't have to be that to have a good academy, right? So, I think there are ways for the Fire to do it without being that. I mean, obviously the ultimate goal for the Fire is to be that sort of presence in Chicago. But if we're being honest, that's not going to be happening in the short term, right?
Ooh.
There's a lot of work that needs to be done before that happens, right? And a lot of structural barriers that need to be overcome. That's a long-term project. So the academy doesn't need to be. You can get that going quicker.
I think we got another question here. With Chicago USL maybe all but over with, do you think the Fire FO front office are a bit more at ease? They really don't have anyone pushing them to be better.
I mean, I would disagree. They don't have anyone pushing them to be better.
Yeah, I would disagree there too.
Like, isn't that the whole league? Isn't
That's
that all of MLS, right? Like, they have a lot of people pushing them to be better.
Well,
And,
the fans.
Well, didn't Polster have some weird comment saying that there's no media presence in Chicago?
Well,
And
he felt that there was a lack of competition
something like
sometimes
that, and
on the
they don't get
team,
criticized enough.
and they don't get
yeah, no, I mean, I think those things are true, but I think from an organizational standpoint, like, and talking to Nelson Rodriguez many times that I've talked to him, like, there's no issue there of him being motivated or wanting to win. That's not the problem.
Oh yeah, we totally
You know,
I think the guy wants to win. Absolutely.
Yeah, there's no issue with work ethic or anything like that.
No, I don't see that at all.
Say what you want about Nelson, but I don't think you can say that he doesn't try hard.
I think he is a hard worker. I think he cares about the Fire. Absolutely.
Too many hats.
Genuine.
My point is maybe he has too many hats.
Yeah, and I think he agrees with that, to be totally honest. So I don't know how long he's going to be doing chief business officer and chief soccer officers. It's sort of become known in the league.
That's good.
I don't think that's a forever arrangement. So we'll see. I mean, I think he's sort of, that's a hard job for anyone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Do you know anything about Chicago USL?
I don't, not really. I mean, I know the stadium stuff, right?
Yeah.
Where that got nixed.
It's
right?
kind of
So
kiboshed at the moment.
Yeah.
on hold.
So, but you never know with these things. They change from over time, and sometimes developments happen, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they come back, and then they go away, and they come back, and blah blah blah. But so I don't know what's happening with USL. I don't think a USL team. Let me kind of think about this for a second. I think a USL team would kind of light a fire underneath the fire a little bit, right? But at the same time, I don't think people are going to be coming out in droves to support a USL team in Chicago. Like, even if they're at that Lincoln Yards location, which would be amazing, right? That's such a good location for a stadium for a soccer team.
But traffic could be it could be horrible.
Well, yeah, traffic's always horrible. Like,
yeah, the city, of course.
Traffic's horrible going to Bridgeview. Like, so you deal with that. But I think that would maybe light a little bit more of a fire under them. But with the Fire, it's just the stadium location and the lease, and it's going to be really hard for them to be successful on that level, not necessarily on the field, right? But on that overall, Atlanta United, Seattle Sounders, level until they're in the city. And that to me is just a truism and something that no one really, beyond an ownership level and even at an ownership level, can easily change.
Do you know anything about? Sometimes we'll talk about Mansueto. The Mansueto. Maybe if you can't talk about this, I understand.
So I don't really know anything about Joe Mansueto. No, I know what you guys know about him. I've heard, obviously getting more money into the team raises the possibilities on what you can do, right?
Right.
Beyond that, I don't really know much. The one thing I would say is, given what I've heard about what Andrew Hotman the price of what 49% of the team might be, the estimates that I've heard there. I don't think anyone would get in at that sort of price to lose money, lose $5 to $10 million year after year after year in perpetuity.
Right.
Right. Now, these MLS teams are assets too, right? And so they're things that maybe people are looking to flip in the future. And I'm not saying this about Mansueto or Hotman or anyone in particular, but the fact is the price of an MLS team has skyrocketed. So if you want to get in and then sit on it for 10 years, even if you're losing money each of those 10 seasons, you're probably going to be able to flip it after those 10 years for a pretty significant profit, right? So, like, I don't know exactly what the situation is with Mansueto. He seems involved. He's been at games. He was at the Motorola jersey event. You know, I actually walked in right behind him. I didn't even know it was him. He was there with two of his kids.
Could ask him for a quote or something.
And so he seems involved, right, which is a positive thing, and shows that he would seem to care if he's showing up to the things like that. Then he seems like he has a stake in it, and he seems interested. So that's positive. But yeah, I mean, I don't really know too much other than, hey, if there's more money in the club, that's rarely a bad thing.
Yeah, it can't be a bad thing. But maybe let's go until we'll kind of start closing it down here. Guys, get your last comments in, your last questions in for Sam. Sam, thanks again for taking the time on this Sunday to come talk with us.
Yeah.
Let's see. What I was thinking about Usted, I think he's got some competition in Richard Sanchez. I wouldn't be surprised if Richard actually might overtake him. Because I feel like there's potential to maybe sell Richard Sanchez if you have something there. And how else would you find that out? We tried to find out last year. We saw some flashes.
Richard Sanchez was really bad last year.
He was awful. Coming off his line, he was always in no man's land.
I think he could stop shots.
I mean, there's so much more to goalkeeping than that. Like,
exactly.
You know,
yes.
Can he stop shots? Can he make a highlight reel save? Yeah. But like, that doesn't mean anything if you're making mistakes left and right that cost your team goals.
Yes.
Like, and Richard Sanchez, no one is going to come in and pay a transfer fee for Richard Sanchez.
No.
Okay, so maybe we don't have anything.
Coming off of what he was last year. No one would even, if the Fire tried to trade him within MLS, you wouldn't get more than $100,000 in allocation money.
Yeah.
You would probably have to do a draft.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like,
Yeah, I mean, he really was that poor last year. Not trying to pile on the guy here, but
I don't want to bag on the kid.
Yeah,
He's
exactly.
And he's got potential to turn it around. But the notion that I mean, I don't want to rule it out because the Fire under Paunovic and Rodriguez have been exceedingly weird with what they do with their goalkeepers.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to say anything's impossible. And you know,
Jorge Bava
could come back, right? But like, no one's barking down that door to try and get him. Mm-hmm. At least within MLS.
Do you foresee Nelson maybe making a big trade of potentially a starting player to bring in a different player, maybe to get that midfield to work better? Maybe Dax goes to Orlando. I'm just saying this as a speculation. I don't want Dax to leave, by the way.
I don't see anything like that happening in terms of Dax. I wouldn't rule out any sort of trade, you know, or any sort of move. Like, I would hope that Nelson Rodriguez is keeping all of his options open at all times.
And then what would he be targeting?
Like any good GM should, right? And if a deal presents itself that's solid and would improve the Fire, then go for it, right? Pull the trigger, regardless of what it is. I don't think that would involve Dax McCarty. I think the Fire will likely feel pretty good about the state of their front six right now in terms of their starting players, and they want to give them some time on the field together, I would imagine, before they shake it up. But I mean, they do need to add depth in every position, and they do need to add some quality in the back line. So, you know, there are moves left to be made. I don't know exactly what the nature of those could be. I wouldn't be surprised if they went out and tried to make a bigger move along the back line at some point, though, this year.
And the season starts next week. It's all of a sudden upon us.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And I feel like the same thing happened last season, where the season all of a sudden started to happen, and the Fire were once again unprepared. They seem more prepared this season, but they still have giant holes.
Yeah, they're not alone in that. Like we talked about, most teams in the East do still.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, not to excuse where the Fire are. I think they still do have some big holes that I'm sure they wanted to get addressed before now. They haven't been able to. But, you know, most teams in the East, like, you know, you run it down, Toronto, right? That's a huge hole. DC, they have a lot of similar questions along the back line as Chicago. Is Frederick Brillant, is he going to be the starting center back? New York City FC, what happens with Novia and Herrera, right? Montreal, like, are they good enough? Like, you know, we know most of the pieces there, but are they good enough? Philadelphia, can they repeat? Is, like, Merignanen and Bedoya, are they going to have the legs, right? Are there, like, a lot of the same issues as the Fire? So, you know, not to excuse anything, but I don't think they're alone in having holes, particularly in the East.
That's good to hear.
That being said, you know, they weren't alone in that at the beginning of last season either, and they never figured it out. So they have to go figure it out now.
That's
we going back to the chat questions here. Do the Fire actually see anything coming from Indy 11 or the Michigan team?
See anything coming?
I guess
in
I don't know.
terms of-
Coming from the loan.
Coming in from the loan
relationship. From having
I
those
mean,
guys.
ideally, guys are able to go down there and develop a little bit, right?
Mhm.
But it's hard to pull that off when it's not your own USL team,
Exactly.
right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just difficult because it's like, okay, you can affiliate with a club, but what if they have a really good left winger? And what if the guy you want to develop that isn't getting minutes on your first team is a left winger?
Well, that's what
how is
happened
he
to goalie
With Cleveland at Tulsa, yeah.
in Tulsa.
Right. So, like, how do you get around that? So there are issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
And really the only way around it is having your own USL team where you don't need to worry about results and you can just play 16-year-olds from your academy and you can have guys go down there for rehab stints coming off of injury and get their legs back and you can use it however the hell you want, right? So with affiliate agreements, yeah, ideally it works out. They're just difficult. It's structurally difficult because those teams have incentives to win and sell tickets and, develop their own players in hopes that maybe they can move them on, right? So, and to win, right? To say nothing of wanting to win. Whereas if you have your own USL team, like Red Bulls 2 or Real Monarchs in Salt Lake City, you can operate it totally differently. And you can operate it in conjunction with your needs as a club.
All right, got some more questions here. What is Garber's plan for Chicago?
I don't
No? All right, moving on.
This one's
telling me. I don't know.
This one's a bit loaded. Is Basti worth a DP spot still from a performance standpoint? Is his marketing value still that high these days?
I'll say that. Not as a center back.
Not as a center back.
I mean, if he stays healthy and he plays midfield all year, he's going to be good, right?
Yeah.
Like, and he can still move around a little bit. He'll be good. Is he worth what they paid for him last year? $6 million? You got a hard time selling me on that personally. But that's his price. So if you want him on your team, that's what you're going to have to pay. And he brings a lot of value for the Fire, I'm sure, in other ways, right? I'm sure he was just having him on the squad helps sell that jersey sponsorship. You know what I mean? So there are other ways where DPs have financial returns beyond tickets in the field, right? And they help in other ways. I'm not privy to how important he is in those sorts of deals. But in terms of pure on-field value, you can get better for your buck than $6 million for Bastian Schweinsteiger or whatever he was making last year if we're looking at $6.
Do you think it's playoffs or bust this year for this front office in Pono?
Well, they both have 2 years left on their contract, I believe. Contracts. So, I mean, not technically.
I feel like they're starting the season off on the hot seat, though.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely pressure. There's no doubt about that. I think a lot of it depends on how the year goes. If it's a repeat of last year, they would have a tough argument to make for why they deserve to come back, right? If it's a situation where you're showing good signs and maybe you make the playoffs as the 7th seed, but then get eliminated in the first round, well, then it's a little bit better. I mean, it's hard to say without knowing the full context. If everyone goes down injured, then you're kind of screwed. Is that Nelson's fault? And you don't blame Pono for it? I don't know, right? Like, who knows how that goes? But, I mean, I don't know. This is a terrible answer. But,
No, I get it.
But is it playoffs or bust in terms of their bosses? Probably not. Should it be? I think it's fair if it was, right? If they're right there if they're knocking on the door, if they're battling for 7th, I think I'd be okay with that. I think I'd be okay bringing them back another year.
Okay.
If they finish 8th, but they're right there in it, and their decision day, it's coming down to that, right? But if they're, if they finish 8th and they're 6 points out or 10 points out, then that's a different story.
Maybe kind of like the last little bit of open-ended question here. Who is like maybe the couple next big names we see coming to MLS in the next year or two? Is Guillermo Ochoa coming to the Fire?
Never remember what? It's always out there. What?
I don't think Guillermo Ochoa is coming to the Fire right now. But, maybe one day. That link has been out there for a long time.
Forever.
It feels like.
And maybe we'll see different styles of names. Maybe instead of the marquee names like the Iniestas coming over, we'll see more of these Pozuelos, right?
Yeah, so I think it's going to be a shift. I really do. I think there's always going to be your marketable guys, your older guys like Rooney and Zlatan that come in and come here and try and raise the profile of the league from the league perspective and the team perspective, and then, from their perspective, come in here and have a nice payday and get to live in the States or Canada. But I think it's going to be shifting more towards those younger guys, like Atlanta have done it, right? Where they go out and spend significant transfer fees on a 21, 22-year-old or younger, and then try and resell and make a little bit of a profit. Or I think this, because we've already started to see that shift a little bit, right? Yeah. But I think you're going to see more like Pozuelo. That's a good shot, where you got guys in that 24 to 27 range that maybe aren't like household names.
Fernando Quintero.
Exactly, but guys that are important to their teams in Europe, are good players, and can make a really, really big impact in MLS, right? Like this Pozuelo guy, he's captain of the first place team in Belgium, and he's 27, right?
Yeah,
that's significant, and I think we'll see more signings along those two categories: the young guys and the guys that are important to their European teams, and say Belgium, Netherlands, Portugal. And even maybe a league or two up, maybe France, getting guys out of those areas and into MLS.
Well, a lot of those players who are abroad value Champions League soccer and stuff of that nature, those types of competitions. So maybe we'll see more of maybe an augmentation or more attention paid to CCL, CONCACAF Champions League, for that reason.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, it's hard to compare that to UEFA Champions League.
Oh my gosh, yeah. But just something to kind of entice.
Playing Guastatoya in Guatemala City is a little bit different than going to the Camp Nou, for instance. But I think it is an interesting competition, and like the fact that no MLS team has won it, I think actually helps MLS teams. If they, I don't think anyone's recruiting based on come play in CONCACAF Champions. You know what
absolutely.
I mean?
But yeah, I think
all right, Sam.
Sam, last comments.
Yeah, any last comments? Thanks for coming on, man.
Any final thoughts about the season? Enjoy it. Right? We get bogged down week to week results. It's fun to watch soccer in our own backyards. So
it's true.
Let's all enjoy it, and let's be thankful for that. But no, thanks for having me on, guys. Excited for the games next weekend. And ready to go. But yeah, this was a lot of fun. Thanks again for having me on.
Thanks for coming on.
It was awesome. We're
awesome.
pumped to have you on. It's been great.
Thanks for joining us, everybody, too, for Spitting Fire. By the way, we should be available on iTunes podcast, stuff like that, available later this week. So if you don't have the ability to listen to us via YouTube, that should be coming down later in maybe this week. They said I submitted it. It gets approved. Blah 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 blah. So take a look for that. Toss a like if you enjoyed the conversation here with Sam. Toss any comments below. We'll certainly do what we can to read it.
Sam writes for what? MLSsoccer.com, right?
Sam writes he's the national writer for MLSsoccer.com. You could find him on Twitter as well. We have his information in the details of the video. Pay attention to his work. He's always putting out great work. He's an ex-Fire guy. He's as you heard in the conversation, ex-Fire confidential guy.
Local boy, yeah.
Local guy made good, right?
Yeah, something like that.
I got one last question for you. What is the go-to food in Boston? Because in Chicago, it's like pizza.
Man. I'm still figuring it out.
Oysters.
But, I mean, the number one is clam chowder and lobster rolls for sure.
And lobster rolls.
So I have yet. I mean, I've had those in Boston in my life. I've not had either since I've moved to Boston. But yeah, getting ready to check those out. And I'm going to say something that maybe will piss some people off. I like East Coast pizza better.
You heard it here.
Damn.
Somebody called you bird dog, by the way.
It's sort of apples and oranges, right? Because deep dish is great. It's like two different foods.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they really are.
And if I'm going to have one often, I'll take the thin crust.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because deep dish, you can only, it's intense.
It's a special occasion.
It's a lot of cheese. It really. It's
but I am gonna miss Italian beef. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Apparently, you could still get like a half frozen Giordano sent to you. So or Lou Malnati's if that's what you're in.
Yeah. I can get the Lou's and maybe some Portillo's beef or something like that sent out. So we'll see.
Heck yeah.
Fair way.
Awesome. Great to hear. Glad you're getting settled in Boston, dude. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah.
Toss us a like. Enjoy the conversation. Follow Sam for more MLS soccer. We'll see you guys later for next season. Let's go Fire. Let's go have a great MLS season. I think we're in for another great one. Wait, last question. Who's going to win it?
Oh, we didn't even sit.
Who's going to win? Oh, man.
I guess I'll sit down.
Who's going to win it?
Oh, my God. Who's going to win? I'm really blanking here.
Is it going to be Atlanta?
No, give me 2 seconds. All
right, take your time. Take your time. I'm going to say, what about Rooney? What about Zlatan?
No, it's going to be Seattle's going to win the West, and the Red Bulls are going to win the East.
Okay.
And whoever is the home team is going to win.
That would be an awesome final.
And I'll say it's the Red Bulls. How about that?
All right, I like it.
Prediction.
All right, Jeff, you can lay yours down. Lay yours down, just because this is
Kansas City.
You're saying Kansas City? I like the shout.
I almost win Kansas City, and I'm kind of regretting going the Red Bulls after I won't be my
got
official
him.
pick.
Oh wow, the Kansas City is a great shout. I don't think Atlanta's going to repeat. Gosh, you guys definitely stole my thunder. It can't be Portland, it can't be LAFC. I wouldn't be surprised if Columbus makes some noise. And
Columbus?
And I'll go Rooney. I'm gonna go Rooney.
You're going Rooney?
I'm going Rooney. I gotta go.
All
All right,
right.
DC.
All
All
right,
right, boys and girls.
Sam.
Thanks for
Thank you so
joining us.
much.
Thank you,
Thanks so
Sam.
much.